true, then how do you change the financial rules, which we desperately need to do? We need to make the financial system a much smaller part of the total economy, and we need to make primary production a much larger sector of the economy. How do we do that if Wall Street rules the world? Well, the only way out of that situation that I can see is to bring people out in the street and to demand fundamental change, which is what's happening. Well, what does all of this mean for Hawaii's economy? For an economy that's based primarily on tourism. It's not good. The prospects are not good. Once again, we're talking about more expensive transport fuels and a financial economy that's not likely to support more consumer debt. What does it mean for Hawaii's power grid? That depends, I've heard figures between 70% and 92% of your power grid based on burning of diesel fuel to generate electricity. I'm not sure what the exact figure is, but in that range, that's an 85%, that's an enormous vulnerability. What does it mean for the whole project of globalization? There's this series of meetings taking place in Honolulu now, APEC, talking about further globalizing the economy of the Pacific region. How much does that make sense at this particular moment in history? Doesn't it make more sense to dramatically and rapidly transition Hawaii's grid system to renewable energy, reduce as much as possible reliance on liquid fuels for transport, localize the economy as much as possible, and especially starting with the food system? If 85% of food is imported, that's another enormous vulnerability. And not to bank on tourism as the linchpin of the economy going forward. We have to rethink the economic engine of this state. What is it going to be in the future, if not tourism? Well, chances are the answer to that question is going to be a kind of similar answer to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, which is, well, it's going to be a smaller economy. You know, we can't assume economic growth. That doesn't mean it's the end of the world, however. You know, we did just fine before we had economic growth. Remember, economic growth is an artifact of the 20th century. But it was a different kind of economy. It was an economy where, yes, there was innovation, new companies, new processes, new inventions were coming along all the time and outcompeting old ones, but the total size of the economy and the rates of consumption were relatively constant. That's what we have to aim for, because that's what we have in our future. Again, it's not the end of the world, but it's a different kind of economy. Now, I just mentioned population here. This is, of course, looking at the dramatic increase in population of urban Hawaii as opposed to the rest of Hawaii. I think we're likely to see a change in that trajectory in the near future. How much further can this curve go? So rather than planning for more population growth, shouldn't we also be planning for a change in that trend? We have to replace GDP with other kinds of measures. A lot of economists have agreed for decades that GDP is a perverse indicator. There are all sorts of things that make GDP go up that actually make life worse. You know, wars can make the GDP go up. So should we have more wars just to make the economy improve? People have done that before, actually. I wouldn't recommend it. But we could have a better life. See, what we've been doing over the past few decades is we haven't been actually aiming to make life better for people we've been aiming to grow the economy. That has been the primary goal of policy, right? And generally speaking, it worked. We did grow the economy, but we didn't make life better for people. If you do cross-cultural psychological studies to find out where people are happiest, it turns out that in the countries where people are consuming the most energy and materials, well, yeah, people may be relatively happy, but they're not happier necessarily than people in countries that are consuming a tiny fraction of the energy and materials. There are lots of things that make people happy. The sense of community, of cooperation, of intergenerational solidarity, of culture, music, art, dance. Those things make people happy, but they don't cost much and they don't necessarily make the GDP go up, so we don't pay attention to them. If we started paying attention to them, we could have a better way of life even as consumption declines, which it will anyway. We need to build local resilience. What is resilience? It's the ability to absorb shocks and keep going. We have shocks on the way, and I'm sorry to say they're not far off in the distant future. They're coming soon, and they'll be very tough. So how do we absorb those shocks? Well, resilience is, in most cases, the opposite of economic efficiency. I'm not talking about energy efficiency, but economic efficiency. Economic efficiency says if you can grow corn cheaper in Iowa than any place else, then you should grow all of your corn in Iowa and don't bother growing anything in Iowa except corn. Okay? So that gives you the cheapest corn you can possibly have, but it also gives you a food system that is not resilient. It's brittle, because if the corn crop in Iowa fails, nobody has corn. And, well, you can imagine the rest. So a resilient system typically has redundancies built into it, and also inventories. Economic efficiency tries to do away with inventories, just-in-time supplies, and reduce redundancy as much as possible. So local resilience, what does that mean? It means lots of people growing food for themselves. It means more self-reliance. It means more people occupying the same vehicles. You know, I think we're going to solve our transportation problem not by everybody buying a brand new $40,000 electric car, because I don't think very many of us are going to be able to afford to do that anytime soon. I think we're probably going to solve our transport problem by more people crowding into existing cars. You know, car share, ride share programs. As we do all of these things, we're going to have to reform economics itself. You know, economics as a discipline just grew up during this past century of rapid economic growth. And so most economists have internalized this phenomenon, and they believe that economic growth is normal and natural and it'll go on forever. But there are lots of other ideas that have become normalized within economics that need to be questioned. We need to understand that the economy, the human economy, is a subset of the environment, not the other way around. You know, the human economy ceases to function if we don't have a functioning ecosystem. Growth in population and consumption levels is fundamentally not sustainable. It can go on for a while, but not forever. Renewable resources have to be harvested at less than the rate of natural replenishment. You know, a 10-year-old child can understand some of these principles, but sometimes a trained economist has a little difficulty. Non-renewable resources have to be recycled as much as possible, and extraction of non-renewable resources has to decline. Okay, so those are basic economic principles. Now, can we follow those principles and still build these things? I don't know, is the answer to that question. I don't think anybody does. But how do we make these now? With depleting scarce materials, using virtually slave labor, using processes that are polluting the environments where production is occurring? How much longer can we continue to do that? I don't know, but certainly not in perpetuity. If we really like these gadgets, if we really think these are the coolest things in the world, then we got to figure out how to make them in a different way. I would suggest that every town and city should be thinking about developing a community economic laboratory that brings together credit union and food co-op, a job center, a free clinic, a car share program, all of these things that probably already exist in your community, but as alternatives. These need to become the mainstream. These will be the core of the new economy, rather than just nice little add-ons that we use it, the sustainable buzzword to refer to. And finally, I would say this overall transition in the economy is a very big deal. And perhaps in retrospect, we will see it as being as big a deal as any of the great transitions in human history. The development of fire, perhaps 3 or 4 million years ago, that enabled us to cook our food and to transform our environments. The development of language that enabled us to coordinate our behavior over space and time. Think about what it might have been like to bring down a mastodon without language. But if you could coordinate, if you could say, well, now I'll be waiting in the bushes with this spear, so you chase the mastodon in this direction, and when it gets to this point, language really has given us enormous power over our environment. The same thing with agriculture, which we developed only starting 10,000 years ago. Language maybe a few tens of thousands of years ago. Agriculture, which gave us cities, full-time division of labor, civilization itself, and then finally the Industrial Revolution. Okay, each of those great transitions enabled us to expand in population and in power over the environment. Now we are at the end of that trajectory. We're now at the point where we have to grow up as a species and recognize that there are limits and learn how to live within those limits. Rather than being the end of the world, I would regard this as the beginning of our maturity as a species. So I appreciate your thoughtful attention over these last few minutes, and hopefully we can have some discussion. Thanks very much.